How does Steph Curry train? What new tricks has he added this year? What are the keys to functional movement that can unlock your game? The only question left is, say it with me, you in? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. Today, I am pleased to bring on the show Brandon Payne, who is the personal development coach for Steph Curry, and a guy who we can never seem to have enough time to speak about basketball whenever we get together. So, Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's discuss what happened last night for a minute, because on Twitter some people were freaking out. But Steph Curry had a move where he basically does a shot fake off of a dribble and then gets to the basket and finishes. And I thought, I know you saw it last night. We had some people who were pretty upset on Twitter that they thought it's the demolition of what fundamentals are supposed to be. It's a travel, it's a carry, it's all these things. So can you walk us through the evolution of that move for Steph and why it is perfectly legal?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about the steal, the transition where he hesitated and went to the basket off of a tight inside out. I think when you first see it, it happens. It almost looks like it's a reverse carry, so his hand turns to the inside. But what it is, it's really nothing more than a tight, very, very tight inside-out dribble with no shoulder movement. It is something that we work on, and part of what makes that move so difficult is the fact that there is a change of pace in how the dribble happens. And so the shot fake, or it's not really a shot fake, or the lack thereof, is the fact that he gets to the top or gets to the 3-point line and really hesitates, really changes speeds, not only with his feet but also with the ball, and he just turns his index finger and his middle finger just ever so slightly to the inside of the basketball and pushes it towards the lane. That's nothing more than an inside-out dribble. So it's not a palm, it's not a carry, it's certainly not a travel. It's just something that we're not used to seeing, and it just looks different.
I think the key here is the left hand does come up and gets so close to the ball without actually touching, which that's the key here for me, is that's when you can tell he's practiced that, and that's a skill to really make sure you get that left hand moving like you're going to shoot it, right?
Absolutely. And, listen, I have no problem saying we're going to try to push things as far as we can in terms of what we can do with footwork and what we can do with the ball without being a traveler, without being a carry, just simply because the players in the NBA are so good. They're so long, so athletic. They're such good defenders that, you have to get really creative with the ball and with your feet. And you got to do it within the parameters of the rules, but you certainly have to push everything right up to the edge of them to make sure you're exhausting every potential opportunity to create space and score.
Absolutely. That's what's exciting about the game, that there's more to get to, that we're not finished evolving here. I think the feet, by the way, is also a really key component that people might not notice as much, because he's simulating a jump shot with his feet. And I know that the shot fake involved with the hands is also a real thing for the defender to get confused on, but I don't know. I feel like when I watch the rhythm of that and you watch the feet go left to right, it's almost a hop in there. That is also the rhythm that throws the defender off. I mean, he literally is so completely confused by that. And we've seen this move a little bit, and I'm kind of curious. Like, you work on a lot of different moves all summer long. And, how do you think that works? What does the decision-making process go? Like, do you think that Steph was working on that move before the game and it came to him then? Or, like, how does that decision-making process work when he chooses that move versus other ones?
That was something that we actually worked on this past weekend. So, I mean, it is the preseason, and it is a time for you to try some things. You have a little bit of freedom. The outcome of the game is not necessarily very important, so you've got the freedom to try some things and kind of test out some of the newer stuff that we've worked on in the off season. So that was something that we worked on. Actually, we didn't work on it in a transition setting like that. We worked on it in a retreat setting this past weekend. So the fact that he was able to take it and put it into play in a different, basically a different scenario is pretty impressive. I'm happy he tried it.
Does that happen sometimes where you realize, you've forgotten this great move that we worked on, in the middle of the year? Does that happen?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I talk to Steph about, and the other guys that I work with is we're not practicing choreography. So, we're not saying anytime I work with them, you go from this move to this move to this move. What we do is we just give them a baseline, a set of footwork skills and a baseline set of ball handling moves. And we allow them to stack things on top of each other in whatever way they see fit. So it's kind of like Legos. They all kind of fit together to form something, but you can use them in different ways. You can flip them. You can go both directions. So we do that, and also do a lot of mirrored footwork, which means whatever the footwork pattern is that we use going to the right, we use the same footwork pattern going opposite to the left, so that your footwork, you've got an answer for everything. So we certainly, there's certainly combinations that we'll work on, and they'll kind of get lost, and then we'll eventually get back to them. But that does happen from time to time.
It sounds like you're auditioning to be a judge on So You Think You Can Dance, because right? It's exactly what they do on Broadway.
Yeah, it's just baseline concepts, and so we don't want to work necessarily in choreography. We just want to give you, the player, the concepts to operate out of, so that you can make it fit your game. And it's not me trying to tell you how to play, or not me trying to say, hey, you do this in this situation or this in that situation. It's just giving you the skills to draw upon when certain things arise.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. That's part of the talent we're talking about, is the fact that on the fly, in real time, very quickly, they can make those decisions. And I suspect that if you worked with 100 players, Steph would probably be at the top of the list as far as quickness of decision making too.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, his ability to see information, process information, and make quick and accurate decisions is off the charts. I mean, his intelligence level is very high, and the fact that he's trained this way and done this now, this is our 8th year together. So, I mean, he's got a really solid foundation to draw upon when he's out there, and so he's pretty much got an answer for everything now.
Well, okay. Well, enough with the love fest for Steph. Let's get real for a minute here and talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that he does struggle with that you feel like you've worked on, even like this summer. Are there things that you felt like were a real an issue for him that you wanted him to overcome?
Well, we're always looking to expand things, and we're always looking to add things to his game. So, one of the things that we continued to work on this year, and believe it or not, was becoming a more balanced shooter. In different footwork situations. So not only did we have him do things, in a ball screen type setting and do things in transition, we also put his back to the basket a little bit. And not meaning that we put him in the post or anything like that, but we put him in situations where there's certain cuts and there's certain things they do within their offense where he will sometimes catch the ball coming across the floor, but he'll catch it with his back to the rim. So we put him in a lot of awkward footwork positions to force him to learn how to play and learn how to use his balance, starting by not facing the rim. And I think he did a really nice job with that. We also were able to transition him from straight line drives to the basket to where if he got cut off, we were able to transition from being a driver to being a back to the basket player when you get cut off. And I thought he did a really nice job with that. And I think he's added a few things to his game that he should feel pretty comfortable enough to use this coming season. Oh,
well, can we break some news? Give us an example of what he's added.
Well, yeah, I mean, so, it's no different than our footwork concepts facing the basket. We have a baseline concept, whether it be a baseline shoulder turn or a middle shoulder turn, and then we have counters for that. We normally go 3 counters deep. But the counters are not predetermined, if that makes sense. The counters are all based off of how he's being defended. Some of the counters involve ball handling. Some of them don't involve ball handling. So it's just like anything else. We're trying to give him as many answers as we can for every different potential situation that he would face. And, for a guy like him that's always played facing the basket, for him to be able to, catch it not only, in the short corner or the extended corner or even around, the elbow area, and be able to have moves to make either, to turn and take a shot, turn, go to the basket, or turn and escape out to the 3-point line. Now we feel like he's got answers for all that stuff.
It's funny because we've seen him, maybe even take a few more mid-range shots, which seems like, craziness. But Would this be something that you'd kind of go to Coach Kerr and sort of say, hey, we've got these kind of things. Is there stuff on the offense we can create to get that? Or are you just sort of relying on his individual creativity to get to those spots that are now newly added to his game?
Yeah, I think it's just more relying on his individual creativity. I mean, the Warriors, they've got a pretty good thing going. They're doing a pretty good job, and they got a really good handle on things. So, but it's relying on Steph's creativity and his ability to realize and figure out what the defense is giving him. Because I think, one of the things that's important early in the games is, everybody's got to pick something to give up, right? You can't take everything away. So, early in games or in certain situations, if they're going to give you the mid-range shot, then he's going to hit that shot. And the more you start to hit that shot, the softer the defense is going to be, because they're going to start to realize that we have to cover that a little bit. And then more stuff on the perimeter opens up. So I think part of the strategy for him, being able to get into the mid-range and make things happen there, is to eventually open him up a little bit more on the perimeter, because people are not only have to respect him now going to the basket, but you have to respect the ability to stop in the mid-range, and that just forces players to play off of him a little bit more, which gives him more time and more space to either shoot a three or escape deeper into a 1 or 2 step deeper three. Which he certainly has the ability to hit. So, it's making him a threat from 30 feet and in at every increment along the way. And that's what makes him so difficult to guard.
And if you want to be difficult to guard, then you got to get into a serious pair of basketball shoes. And StockX is the best way to get the hottest new sneakers as they're just hitting the shelves. StockX is a revolutionary new marketplace for buying or selling 100% authentic sneakers, streetwear, watches, and handbags. And here's the cool part about it. StockX uses the same principles as the stock market to make your purchases by giving you real-time market data for intelligent buying and selling. You'll see exactly how much an item has sold in the past and what it's selling for now. Best of all, StockX has removed the risk from buying and selling online. Total anonymity between buyer and seller. You'll never have to deal directly with a random buyer or seller again. StockX has experts that verify every item, making sure everything you get is 100% authentic. Visit StockX.com/CoachNick now, and you'll see what an incredible platform this is. That's StockX.com/CoachNick. Now you know. Is it safe to say that 30 feet is going to start to expand even farther as he gets further along in his career?
I don't know if we'll go much deeper than that, but I mean, he certainly is comfortable deeper than that shooting in workouts. Now, whether we really want him taking that many shots from 30 plus feet, that's debatable, but he certainly has the ability to hit it.
You've been working with Curry long enough that you've seen the evolution of the offense he's played in Golden State. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wonder if do you think that if he's playing currently on another team in a different style of offense, would he be able to be as good as he is now?
I think so, because he adapts to every situation, and also I think that whatever team that he played for, the coaching staff would probably right. adapt to him. So I don't think his success would change one way or the other. But I think that he's such an intelligent player. He's learned how to take what's given, and he's learned how to kind of force his hand and create what he wants. That I don't think that will really change too much.
Well, there was a jump though, and from his game in the first 3 years or so until maybe the 4th year or 5th year. And I'm kind of curious, guys come in the league at certain abilities, and they do work on their game, they do improve. So do you feel like the level he's been playing at for the last several years, did he have the capability of doing that earlier in his career, or was it simply a matter of he just needed to train and improve before he got there?
Well, I think he had the capability, but it's just a matter of learning from the experiences that you go through during the season. So I think one of the things where the big jump kind of coincided was he had a really big jump there years 3 and 4, but also what coincided was with that first playoff experience with Denver, and when they played Denver and San Antonio. I think the the San Antonio series and the way that they were able to defend him and the success that they had in that series, kind of taking some things away from him, it really made him, and it really made me as somebody that works with him as trainer, it made me kind of evaluate how we were doing things, because I think that we were kind of taking the traditional approach of, we want to, get in the mid range, get to the basket, and everything's going to be like, going to the basket. And we started to realize, these guys are really big, they're really long, they're really athletic. Sometimes there's not a lot of space in there, but where is there space? There's always space behind you, and there's always space beside you. So that was the first summer that we really started working on escaping and getting back. And not that he wasn't working on shooting those deep shots before, he certainly was. But now we were working on shooting those deep shots from an escape standpoint. So we were starting at the three-point line. We were learning how to control the defender's footwork at the three-point line, and then getting away when we needed to get the shot up. So I think it just took those experiences for all of us to kind of sit there and say, hey, how can we get better? How can we be more efficient in these types of settings when teams are really going to play you 5-6 times in a row? They get really dialed into what you're doing, and I think that series was really transformative for him in his career, because he saw what a really well coached, really driven team does to teams in the playoffs, and I think that he learned a lot from that.
Sure. Well, here's the thing I noticed last night a little bit, and this could very well be my mind just, maybe not as focused. It was happening without me seeing it last year, but it kind of felt like last year, maybe the year before, like the dribbling stuff that he does, which is usually really fancy and really, it gets the crowd going, but does serve a purpose in the court as well. It kind of felt like he didn't do it as much as he did even like last night. It seemed like something about him, the way he played last night, was he was doing a lot more combination dribble stuff to get open. Am I crazy, or did that feel that way maybe last year? He got into a different kind of rhythm?
Got into a different rhythm. I think that, the ball handling portion, there's a little bit more rhythm and simplicity, if that makes sense. And we do so much from a ball handling standpoint in the off season because we don't do a whole lot of catch and shooting. So, I try to get as much ball handling with him in as I can in our shooting sessions, our shooting drills, so that we're not spending a lot of time just dribbling the basketball. I think that he's gotten to the point now to where he's so good with his body, he's so good with his footwork, and he's so good with his balance that, there's not a lot of herky-jerky start and stop that is necessarily needed now. Of course, he's going to pull it out from time to time, but I think now his footwork has gotten so good, and he's so good with these 3 or 4 different ball handling moves that he likes to use. He doesn't have to get really complex with it. He can be really simple. We want to be very efficient. We don't want to take too many dribbles. And I think that there's a calmness and kind of an ease to him now, shooting off the dribble, that where he can create that same space that he maybe used to have to do a little bit more to create with the ball with less dribbles. And I think that's why you're seeing just kind of an easier look to what he's doing.
Fair. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it kind of felt that way because I feel like he would entertain a little bit more, and maybe as he's getting into this part of his career, it's more about efficiency and ruthlessness of destroying these guys in a quicker way. But I did notice that maybe he was just trying to try some stuff out in the preseason as well, where he had some extra combos. How many moves do you think he does have? And you mentioned he has like 3 or 4 that he likes. How many moves does he have off the dribble to shoot threes?
It's kind of endless. I mean, because we have, again, we work on things mirrored. So if we have, what we call a right-hand slide step on the right side of the floor, we have a left-hand slide step on the left side of the floor. So, that alone, that's 2 different moves. And then he can do the same footwork going between his legs, the same footwork behind his back. So it starts to add up really quick. And then we have everything from shift steps to fall steps to throw cross. I mean, it's a pretty big number. He's got, like I said, he's got an answer. We haven't sat down and done the math on it, but basically the way that the system was designed was to give him infinite answers. There's always an answer. As long as the ball's alive and you're balanced, you've got an answer for it. So that's kind of how we look at it.
Okay, fair enough. And I get that. You're right. It is endless because you can combine the beginning of one part of a move with the ending of another one. And it's a whole new move that you probably haven't even seen before.
There's probably, I would say, on each side of the floor, there's probably 15 to 18 that he's really, really comfortable starting with, and then he's got a combination behind all of them, or a counter behind all of them if he wants to go to it. So if you're kind of counting that, then you're looking at 30 to 36 moves total on each side of the floor, or total for the entire floor that he's comfortable going to, and that's really hard to cover.
Well, it's time for the argument section of the podcast, because when we were talking a couple weeks ago, here's what I do. When I study this stuff and I'm looking at guys and what they're doing, I feel like reverse engineering is a really important part of the process here. Mm-hmm. And I look at, I think you had said something to the fact of you cannot use Steph Curry as a model for shooting the basketball and wanting to reverse engineer that and teach it. And I say, if he's the guy that's doing something we've never, ever seen before, well, maybe he's doing it right and we're all doing it wrong. Response?
Well, I think, again, I try to operate in concepts from a conceptual standpoint. I don't try to operate in, we do this, we do A, B, C, D. What I'm saying by that is, when I look at a shooter, okay, I think that we have to start with that shooter's movement mechanics first. And every shooter's movement mechanics are going to be different. Some shooters are going to have tight hips. Some shooters are going to have some challenges from a thoracic mobility standpoint. Some shooters are going to have shoulder mobility issues. Some shooters are going to have tightness in their ankles that doesn't allow them to get completely square to the basket. So from a shooting standpoint, well, the reason I say you can't compare everybody to Stephen Curry and he's not a really, not the end-all be-all comparison from that standpoint, is because Stephen's physical limitations and physical challenges are different than everybody else's. So it's really hard to even compare shooter to shooter. Now, from a conceptual standpoint and how he uses footwork, how he creates space, how he changes speeds, how he stays balanced, how he finishes his shot, things like that you can point to and say, hey, that's how you do it. But the entire process of picking the ball up off the floor and getting it from the floor to the finish of the jump shot is going to be from shooter to shooter. So it's really hard from a comparison's sake to say, well, you got to do it exactly like Stephen does it here or exactly like Klay Thompson does it there. Because, again, they do it two different ways because their physical challenges are different than everybody else's. So from a conceptual standpoint, I would agree that, from you want to look at all of the concepts that Stephen operates with, from how he creates space, how he finishes, but how he lands is going to be different than how other guys land. So it's just hard to say, hey, that's exactly how you do it, because that's just not the case for every player. And I think we have to take players on a case-by-case basis when we start to teach mechanics to them. But the concepts do stay the same.
Okay, I mean, and fair enough. And because by the way, like some of the things we see, and I think what I'm extrapolating from is I'm trying to get away. I think I'm saying the same thing you are, which is we want to get away from the cookie cutter. Like this is the absolute way you must shoot the ball. And because I used to torture my players and pull and stretch and yank to try and get their elbows and their shoulders in the right spots.
Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like, and the more I teach, the more I work on this, the less I actually do, which is interesting, right? I get more involved with, okay, what you described. I want the feet, I want the alignment, I want the release. But what happens in between is what your body does. Let me ask you this. So what we've seen a lot of Steph is, when he brings the ball up from off the dribble, his hand is like on the side of the ball. And only as it's getting above by his shoulder length does the wrist cock back and then actually get underneath the ball.
He has a little bit of a rotation there. Yeah, there's a slight rotation there.
Yeah.
In terms of, so you're saying, because his right hand is on the side of the ball, and as he goes up to shoot it, there's a rotation and his thumb ends up getting under the ball.
Late.
Yeah, it gets under there late.
I shouldn't say late, right? It's on time for him,
yeah,
right?
It works for him, but and there may have been something early in his life when he was taking a lot of shots where there was a challenge within his shoulder. I know he played baseball, and he played golf. He did a lot of other things. There could have created maybe a little bit of tightness in there that caused that, but that's not something we necessarily need to fix because it's not really an issue. I think that when we're looking at these things, there's two things that I need every shooter to be, and that's comfortable and confident. And there's going to be some slight irregularities, in everybody's shot. And I deal with the same thing when I'm teaching my sons how to shoot. My two sons shoot the ball completely different, but the result for both of them is pretty much the same. The ball goes in the basket. And the one thing I like to tell a lot of coaches, especially, is we don't play basketball in a textbook, right? We don't play on a sheet of paper. It's not black and white. It's all gray area. And it's all individualized too. And I think that's important for us as coaches and trainers to understand, is the way that we handle one player is never going to be exactly the same as we handle another player. Now, we can do the same drills and we can play the same shooting games and things like that. But when we start to get into it from a mechanic standpoint, even, from a move standpoint, what moves we make to get the ball from the perimeter to the basket. I mean, some guys are going to be perfectly fine going between their legs because they've got great movement below their hips. Some guys are going to have a hard time going between their legs when they go to the basket just because there's so much tightness that they're dealing with in their hips or in their lower back. So going behind the back is going to be a better move for them, which is going to limit them because when they get into traffic, you can't go behind your back. So it's, every player is going to be a little bit different. Everybody's got some different challenges, and we have to make sure that we're teaching to that and we stay on the conceptual side, not the absolute side of teaching.
Well, I think what's interesting here is that for so long, the basketball, coaches didn't really have any sense of the biomechanics and how the functional movement of a body works. And I feel like, you're a rare breed here of person that actually has all the knowledge of the functional movement and the basketball skills. And I don't know if it's realistic to expect that to change where, more and more of the basketball guys can really master this stuff. So like what happens then as far as we try and progress and improve? And if the coaches are listening to this, like how can they get closer to that knowledge without having to go back to school and getting all those letters after their name?
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody has to become a master at that or a genius at that. I think that it's important to have a really good basic understanding of functional movement and functional anatomy, just in terms of, what joint responsibility is from the ankle to the knee, the hip, lumbar spine and thoracic spine, the role of each joint, understanding how each joint should be moving independently. I think those types of things are important because, the information is so readily available to us now. It wasn't necessarily readily available to us 15, 20 years ago just because we didn't have the resources that we have now. But now we do have it, and it's a Google search away, or it's an Instagram search away. It's all out there. And I think that, as coaches and trainers, we're no different than players. We all tell our players that we want them, we expect them to improve every day. We as coaches and trainers have the same responsibility to our players that we improve each and every day as well. And the way we do that is through, acquiring more knowledge. And I think that, we're all basketball coaches and trainers for a reason because we all have really good basketball knowledge and basketball intellect. And, the one way we can all really improve is to take the time and learn how young athletes' bodies work, how they develop, and how they operate, because that's really the only way that we can effectively teach from a conceptual standpoint and not an absolute. And I keep going back to that because I have young sons and I see their coaches and how they do things. And there's still so much of this is how we've always done it mentality, and this is how we do things. And I think that that's just a mistake, especially with young kids, because some of those kids just can't do the things that we're asking them to do. And it only leads to frustration, not only for the coach, but it leads to frustration for the player as well, and can lead to some confidence issues. So I think that, we got to really take the time to learn how to help our players get better. And the one thing that all the players can improve upon every day is their movement mechanics. We can show kids and we can show NBA players all the skill stuff we want in terms of ball handling, shooting. We can do all the drills. But if they don't have the requisite quality of movement and functional strength and core strength to actually execute those skills in a game, it's a waste of time. So we've got to go back and we have to look at how we're doing things, and we've got to start with the basics of how do we move? What are the functional movements of basketball? How do we train those movements so that our players can execute that well first, and then we add skill on top of that. And I think that, all coaches should just kind of take a hard look at what they do. And I think everybody's doing some really good skill stuff, but are we adding the movement refinement in there to help our players really execute those skills? And I think those are the things we should be looking at.
For sure. And just to help anybody who's listening who might be getting frustrated, thinking like, I just don't know what he's talking about. I kind of feel like, even a simple, and YouTube is a click away, where there's lots of stuff on, these random channels that do videos on NBA and X's and O's. And they also might throw, some on-court demos in there as well. But you can see those exercises where, like the lunge, for instance, where you see the guys, they do a big lunge and then maybe they lift up on the front foot and then balance on that with the back foot straight behind them. I forgot what that's called, but if you can picture that, I would almost imagine that would be one of your leading indicators right off the bat of seeing players who can't keep their balance in a lunge, right? Or can't keep their torsos. And that's easy to see. And I almost feel like from a nervous system standpoint of the player themselves, just working on that on their own would greatly improve a lot of the vertical stacking, a lot of the different kind of movement that they need to get to without having to have, a doctor come in and assess them.
And what we're talking about here, and it's something, of course, we spend a lot of time with Steph and working on that stuff in the off season, but really it's just a matter of spending as a coach, especially at the high school, the middle school, the AAU level. It's really a matter of taking about 8 to 10 minutes at the start of your practice and just going through a movement warm-up. And a lot of coaches do. They're going through a lot of active warm-up stuff now, and that's great. But just take a look at how you're getting ready and how your players are allowing themselves to be in a more balanced position, a more functional position. I'm going to also start putting some things together, some educational materials that we can get out to coaches and that'll be available here in the next few months. But it is really, you just got to get to the point to where you can eyeball a few kind of symptoms. But the key is to not treat the symptom, to treat the cause. And that's, we had that discussion last week as well, where we were talking about shooting the basketball and when we're yanking elbows and wrists, trying to get them into place. That's a symptom of a bigger issue. So we got to treat the bigger issue, not the symptom. And you want to get to the point to where, as a coach, that you can kind of eyeball a few quick things to say, hey, what does this player really need to work on, or what is this player really going to struggle with, and to make sure we're working on the things that the player is really going to do well.
And it's remarkable how much that really does unlock stuff. Even small things, about balance and looking at the way they move. When you point it out and they're aware of that, even they can work on it. It really is. You can unlock 10, 15, 20% more athletic ability, but then that translates into the shooting as well. The one thing I think you mentioned when you say confidence, I kind of try and get away from that word because I feel like people could fake confidence, or they could kind of just sort of swagger into a gym, which doesn't really mean anything. To me, the tangible definition of that is the rhythm, right? Is their body firing in sequence properly? And when you have that rhythm, that's when you feel as confident as you can possibly be, right? Where you almost have your favorite song in your head going as you're coming on the court. And that's what it looks like when Steph plays. And I'm kind of curious, would you agree with that? And does music play a part of your training?
Oh, music's a big part of what we do. I can't remember the last workout we had where we didn't have music blasting. So the music plays a role, but also the way that we use the ball handling and the footwork. It's all designed to be rhythmic as well. I think that there are some shooters. I think there's quite a few shooters that actually can shoot the ball a little bit better off the dribble, because the dribble and the move gives them more rhythm than just kind of standing still and catching the basketball. And I'm noticing that more and more with some of our young players that we have here around our facility, that they actually shoot the ball and get into a better rhythm when they're coming off the dribble. So I agree with you, and rhythm plays a huge role in it, a huge role in shooting the basketball, and how the pass is delivered, how you catch it, all that stuff plays a role in your rhythm as well. So there's a lot of little details to talk about right there. I like to tell young shooters, you score the ball before you ever catch it, because you create your space before you even start to come off of the screen, and then once you catch the ball off the screen, you've got to have your rhythm. So it's there's a lot of teaching points to make there, but rhythm certainly plays a huge role in how many shots and how you hit shots.
Right, and what you just said kind of lends credence to what I keep saying, which is the triple threat is dead. Certainly, in the sense that you're doing a lot of the work before you catch the ball, whereas in the past, the triple threat would have been the reading of the defense after you catch the ball, when you're ripping through, and it's just not the way the game is played anymore.
It's not. I mean, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the defensive concepts that coaches operate with now are so far superior, complex, and athletic, and faster than what we used to see. And I'll tell this to players all the time. Players continue to get bigger and faster. Okay, but the court stays the same size. So in essence, the court is shrinking. And the ability to catch it, look over things, then make a move, that's kind of gone away. I heard some coaches. I can't remember the coach I was listening to the other day as I was watching a like a clinic DVD, but he was talking about how the one thing that they love to play against defensively is teams that dribble the basketball, people that catch it, look, and put the ball on the floor, because every additional dribble allows help to get in better and better position. So, yeah, the triple threat, I mean, in terms of the concept and understanding that you can do three things with the ball and understanding that you can attack in different ways, that's great. But a lot of young players have to speed that process up quite a bit.
Right, and there's no other way to do it than just by practicing live. How much defense are you throwing? And I know we're going to wrap up in a minute, but how much defense does go into training Steph in the summers, or is he just doing a lot of this on his own without anybody?
We do some dummy defense. We do some controlled pickup type scenarios that we play out of. We try to, of course, limit the amount of potential contact that he could have, landing, or the potential contact that he could have going up off the ground. But we do allocate a few minutes each workout to where we'll take something that we just worked on against air, and we'll immediately put a little bit of token defense against it, where he's at least feeling the weight of the defender, at least having to feel which side the defender is favoring or leaning towards. So we do some of that, and then we use some technology to simulate different reads that he would have to make. Based off of where the defender's footwork is, or where the defender is shading. So there's different ways that we can kind of simulate that. Of course, nothing is real as having a live NBA defender in front of you. But from our standpoint, in year 10, we've dealt with some little things in the past from an ankle and knee standpoint. We want to try to limit that as much as we can in the off season, but still try to accomplish our goals.
Lastly, the turnover thing is interesting because it kind of came up where in the beginning he would, the whole team would just throw the ball away so much, and it drove people crazy. But here's the thing I think is interesting is as we've moved into a much more of a ball handling culture or philosophy, right, and shooting off the dribble and all these different things, I don't know. It kind of feels like to me this is the new norm, and like 3 turnovers a game or 3.5 turnovers a game is perfectly acceptable for a point guard. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you if you're not taking a few chances, you can't play this game carefully. And to borrow a phrase, it's the other guys get paid too, and they're pretty good defensively, and they can be very disruptive with their hands, and sometimes they cause the turnovers, and you just got to kind of tip your cap to them for making a better play than you made on that play. So I mean, I think turnover is going to happen as long as you're not getting out of hand with it. I think you're okay. There's just several things. You want to make sure you're getting more shot attempts, more rebounds, more free throw attempts than the other team. So you can't allow your turnover number to affect that. But yeah, definitely the ball's being handled more. The space is getting bigger, so passes are getting longer. So there's going to be some turnovers.
And I think that maybe is it that kind of mindset that you just described is A, what might cause some extra turnovers, but B, allows him to be as good as he can be, right? Because if he ever tried to play carefully, it seems like he'd get blown off the court.
Yeah, I mean, you want them to be, especially him. You want him to be just kind of free and free flowing, and feel like he can take some chances, because that's really what you have to do to beat some of these guys. I mean, they're all great. They're there for a reason, and you got to take some chances and do some things that are outside of the box sometimes in order to have success.
So, last thing, what's your expectation for this year? His field goal, his true shooting percentage last year was second highest in his career. He's the second highest free throw percentage as well. So, what are some of the goals you guys have this year to see him, achieve as far as offensively?
Well, I think, we're constantly talking about efficiency, and we're talking about efficiency from all aspects, whether it be again, talking about numbers of dribbles, talking about getting from spot to spot, talking about physical efficiency, and of course, taking better shots and being an efficient shooter. So, we want to continue to improve upon his efficiency from that standpoint. continue to be and get better at being a tough shot maker, because we know teams are going to get more and more creative and aggressive with how they try to take things away from them. So, I know it sounds crazy, but we talk about being a better shooter all the time.
so you want him to? His goal is to score more than KD this year. Is that what you're telling me?
No, that's not really something we talk about. I mean, as long as they're winning games, I think everybody in that locker room is pretty happy.
Yeah,
so that's not necessarily something we talk about, but we want him to take the shots that are there and take the shots that are there to help his team win games, and just be focused and efficient for 82 games and ready to go for the playoffs when that time comes.
And you're not going to weigh in on who's better, Steph or KD, right?
I mean, they're both great. I don't really know how you choose one or the other. I mean, they're both, maybe the best, one of the best players at their respective positions, especially the best players at their styles that's ever played. So it's really difficult to choose one or the other.
Well, good answer. Good answer. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on the show today and breaking that down. I know a lot of people were really fascinated to hear more. And you know what? We're going to get on the court one of these days. I'm going to have to get to where you are, I think. Let's get on the court. We'll get a camera. Let's film a couple of these concepts and so people can really see what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Love to do it. Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Brandon?
I'm in.